The chamber was built to intimidate. Ambassador Marcus Webb understood this the moment the teleportation beam deposited him onto the crystalline platform at its center. Above him, rising in concentric circles that stretched toward a ceiling lost in artificial clouds, sat representatives from over 800 alien civilizations. Some had bodies. Others existed as energy patterns contained in magnetic bottles. A few were simply voices speaking from dimensions humans couldn't fully perceive. Marcus stood alone on the platform, surrounded by a force field that glowed faintly blue. The field wasn't just a barrier. It was a statement. He was the accused, separated from his judges, displayed for all to see. The Galactic Council had been administering justice from this chamber for 12 million years. Thousands of species had stood where Marcus stood now. Most had left in chains or worse. The lead arbiter, a being called High Chancellor Vorn, occupied the largest seat directly ahead. Vorn's species, the Taurexians, resembled enormous serpents made of metallic scales that shifted colors with their moods. Right now, Vorn's scales showed deep purple, which Marcus's briefing materials had identified as contempt mixed with satisfaction. Human Delegate Marcus Webb, Vorn's voice boomed through the chamber, translated instantly into every language present. You stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your species' violations. Do you understand the charges? Marcus glanced at the holographic display that materialized beside him. The list of charges scrolled past. Unauthorized military expansion, colonization of restricted zones, technology development beyond approved parameters, aggressive first contact protocols. The list continued for several minutes. I understand the charges, Marcus said calmly. I reject their validity. A wave of shocked chittering, clicking, and electronic buzzing rippled through the chamber. To Marcus's left, a delegate who resembled a floating jellyfish pulsed with bioluminescent indignation. To his right, a rock-like creature that communicated through ground vibrations made the entire platform shake with what the translator identified as outrage. Vorn's scales shifted to angry red. You reject the authority of this council? I reject charges based on laws we never agreed to follow, Marcus replied. Earth was granted observer status in the Galactic Council 40 years ago. Observer status. We were told we could watch, learn, and gradually integrate into galactic society. But we were never given full membership. We were never allowed to vote on council laws. And yet now you're prosecuting us for breaking those same laws. A new voice entered the discussion. It came from Counselor Thane, a member of the ancient Praxian collective. The Praxians were energy beings who transcended physical form millions of years ago. Thane appeared as a softly glowing sphere of light. Observer species are bound by council law the moment they accept observer status. This is fundamental protocol. Protocol we were never shown, Marcus countered. When Earth's first diplomats arrived here, they were given a treaty written in galactic standard language. A language we'd only been learning for 3 years. The treaty was 4,000 pages long and included references to 16 other legal frameworks, none of which were provided. Our diplomats were given 6 hours to review and sign. When they asked for more time, they were told that refusing to sign would result in Earth being declared a hostile power and quarantined. Vorn leaned forward. Are you suggesting Earth signed the Observer Treaty under duress? I'm stating a fact, Marcus said. You pressured a species that had barely achieved faster than light travel into accepting terms they couldn't possibly understand. Then you waited 40 years for us to inevitably violate some obscure regulation so you could haul us here. Another counselor spoke up. This one belonged to a species called the Xanthari, insectoid beings with compound eyes and mandibles that clicked rapidly as they talked. Ignorance of law is no excuse. Every species must adapt to galactic civilization or face consequences. Marcus smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. Every species must adapt. That's an interesting phrase, because we've been studying council history very carefully these past 40 years, and we've noticed a pattern. Young species enter the council as observers. They're given impossible laws to follow. When they inevitably break those laws, the Council uses enforcement measures, economic sanctions, technology restrictions, military interventions. The young species either submits completely or gets crushed. Either way, they never become real players in galactic politics. They stay weak. They stay dependent. They stay controlled. The chamber erupted. Hundreds of delegates spoke at once, their voices creating a cacophony even the translation system struggled to process. Vorn raised several of his serpentine appendages, and the chamber fell silent. "You accuse this council of conspiracy," Vorn said coldly. "You claim we systematically suppress emerging civilizations? These are serious allegations, human. Do you have evidence?" Marcus touched a control on his wrist. A new hologram appeared, this one visible to the entire chamber. It showed data. Centuries of data? These are council records we've accessed through legal research channels. They show that in the last 10,000 years, 347 species have joined the Council as observers. Of those, only 12 ever achieved full membership status. The rest either accepted permanent subordinate status or were quarantined and left to stagnate. He expanded the data. Of those 12 species that achieved full membership, 8 did so only after their original governments collapsed and were replaced by regimes friendly to existing council powers. The other 4 required between 500 and 2,000 years to navigate your legal frameworks and political requirements. Humanity has been in space for less than a century. You expect us to wait 2,000 years to have a voice in laws that govern our existence? Councillor Thane's glow intensified. The Council maintains galactic stability. Young species lack the wisdom and restraint necessary for full participation. They must prove themselves worthy. By your standards of worthiness, Marcus shot back. Standards that conveniently ensure you maintain permanent control. Let me ask you something, Counselor. When the Praxian Collective was a young species, did you face these same restrictions? Were you forced to accept observer status and wait centuries for basic rights? Thane's glow flickered. The Praxian ascension occurred 8 million years ago. Conditions were different. Exactly, Marcus said. Conditions were different because the Council didn't exist yet. Your species and the other ancient powers created this system after you'd already reached the top. Then you pulled up the ladder behind you. Now you call it stability. We call it tyranny. Vorn's scales had gone almost black with rage. Enough, you stand accused of specific crimes, human. You have offered no defense, only rhetoric. The Council will now vote on your species' status. If the vote goes against you, Earth will be expelled from Council protection and declared prohibited space. No trade, no contact. No mercy if you attempt to expand beyond your home system. Do you understand? I understand perfectly, Marcus said. And I want to make something clear before you vote. We know what expelled species face. We've studied the records. Within a year of expulsion, Council-aligned corporations move in to claim all resources in the expelled species region. Mining operations strip their systems bare. The expelled species either starves or attacks the mining operations, which gives the Council justification to respond with military force. Either way, the expelled species disappears. The Council has used this exact process 63 times in recorded history. Paranoid speculation, Vorn hissed. Documented fact, Marcus replied. We've analyzed every case. The pattern is consistent. But here's what you don't know. Humanity isn't like the other species you've crushed. We've been preparing for this day since we figured out your game 3 years ago. For the first time, uncertainty rippled through the chamber. Vorn's scales shifted to a mottled combination of colors the briefing materials hadn't covered. What are you talking about? Marcus touched his wrist control again. Every display screen in the chamber, every holographic system, every communication node suddenly showed the same image. A human woman in military uniform sitting in what appeared to be a command center. Behind her, through enormous windows, Earth hung in space. Greetings, Galactic Council, the woman said. I'm Admiral Lisa Torres, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. While you've been prosecuting Ambassador Webb, we've been preparing for every possible outcome of this tribunal. Vorn's entire body coiled in agitation. This is a secured facility. Our systems cannot be breached. Admiral Torres smiled. Your systems were breached 9 months ago. We've had complete access to Council networks since then. We know your military deployments. We know your economic vulnerabilities. We know which species are your real allies and which only pretend loyalty because they're afraid. We know everything. The chamber descended into chaos. Delegates shouted accusations, demands, and threats. Some called for Marcus's immediate arrest. Others demanded military action against Earth. A few, Marcus noticed, said nothing at all. Those were the ones who'd been looking for a way out of Council control themselves. Vorn finally restored order. You admit to espionage against the Council? You have sealed your fate, human. I call for an immediate vote. All in favor of expelling Earth and authorizing military action against humanity, signal now. The vote took less than 30 seconds. Of 812 voting species, 809 voted for expulsion. Only 3 abstained. The vote is recorded, Vorn announced. Earth is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All treaties are void. All protections are revoked. Sol system is declared prohibited space. Humanity has 72 hours to cease all operations outside your home system. Failure to comply will result in military intervention. Admiral Torres, I trust you received this verdict. Torres nodded. We did, and we reject it. Not just the verdict, but the authority behind it. You don't get to vote us into submission. So let me tell you what's actually going to happen. In the next 60 seconds, you're all going to receive a data package. Open it, review it carefully. Then we'll discuss humanity's real position in this galaxy. The data packages arrive simultaneously across 800 Council networks. Marcus watched as delegates opened them and began reviewing the contents. He saw shock register on alien features, heard gasps and cries of alarm in dozens of languages. The packages contained coordinates. Hundreds of coordinates scattered across Council space. And at each coordinate, Council sensors were suddenly detecting something they'd missed before. Human ships. Small vessels equipped with stealth technology that had kept them hidden for months. Each ship was positioned near a critical Council installation. Shipyards, supply depots, communication hubs, civilian population centers. Those vessels are armed with antimatter warheads, Torres explained calmly. Any attempt to attack Earth will trigger their activation. You wanted to expel us? Fine, we're leaving your Council. But we're leaving on our terms. You will not quarantine us. You will not send mining fleets into our space. You will not interfere with human expansion. And if you try, you'll lose everything you've built. Vorn stared at the display showing ships near Taurexian worlds. This is madness. You would murder billions over a political dispute? We would defend our right to exist, Marcus said quietly. You created this situation, Chancellor. You built a system designed to dominate emerging species. Humanity is simply the first species strong enough and desperate enough to break that system. Now you face a choice. Leave us alone and keep your Council intact. Or try to crush us and watch your civilization burn. The chamber fell silent. Finally, a small voice spoke up. It belonged to one of the 3 species that had abstained from voting. Perhaps there is a middle path. Perhaps Earth could be granted independence without triggering mutual destruction. Vorn's scales showed colors Marcus's briefing materials definitely hadn't covered, probably because no Taurexian had ever felt these emotions before. Fear mixed with rage, mixed with grudging respect. We will consider all options, Vorn said slowly. This tribunal is adjourned. The Council will reconvene in 72 hours to determine our response to humanity's ultimatum. Marcus felt the teleportation beam lock onto him. As the chamber began to dissolve around him, he spoke one final time. 72 hours, Chancellor. Choose wisely. He vanished. Behind him, 800 alien civilizations faced a truth they'd never encountered before. The system they'd built to maintain their power had just created something they couldn't control. And for the first time in 12 million years, the Galactic Council didn't know what to do next. The war room, buried 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains, had been designed to survive anything short of a planetary extinction event. Right now, it housed Earth's entire military and political leadership. President Elena Reeves stood at the head of the conference table, watching holographic displays that showed the positions of every Council fleet within striking distance of Earth. "Give me the situation," she said. Admiral Torres gestured to the main display. 18 Council battle groups have changed course toward Sol System. Combined, they represent approximately 40,000 warships. Our intelligence suggests they're staging for a coordinated assault. Estimated time until they're in position? 60 hours. They're moving faster than we anticipated. General Raymond Okoro, commander of Earth's ground forces, leaned forward. Our antimatter deterrent should stop them. They know we'll activate those warheads if they attack. Should stop them, President Reeves repeated. But we're betting human civilization on should? What if they call our bluff? Marcus Webb, who'd returned from the council chamber just 3 hours ago, spoke quietly. It's not a bluff, Madam President. We've already demonstrated we'll use those weapons. The question is whether the council believes we're actually willing to commit mutual destruction. Director Yuki Tanaka of Earth Intelligence Agency pulled up additional data. We're detecting increased communication traffic between council worlds. They're arguing. Some species want immediate military action. Others are calling for negotiation. The Praxian Collective has gone completely silent, which usually means they're making significant decisions. President Reeves moved to the window that showed Earth hanging peacefully in space. When we started this, we knew it might end in war. But looking at those numbers, 40,000 ships against our 300, I have to ask, can we actually win this? Admiral Torres stood beside her. In conventional warfare? No, the Council has been building military capacity for millions of years. Their technology is more advanced. Their numbers are overwhelming. If they commit to destroying us, we can't stop them. Then what's our play? We make the cost unacceptable, Torres replied. Yes, they can destroy Earth, but we've positioned our antimatter vessels at 73 locations across Council space. Those aren't just military targets. They're economic hubs, population centers, historical sites. Species that have existed for millions of years live on those worlds. If they want to destroy humanity, they have to accept that dozens of their own civilizations die with us. General Okoro nodded. It's the same principle that prevented nuclear war in our own history. Mutually assured destruction. Both sides can kill each other, so neither side attacks. Except we're not both sides, President Reeves said. We're one species against 800. The math doesn't favor deterrence working forever. Eventually, someone will decide that sacrificing 73 worlds is worth eliminating the threat we represent. Marcus spoke up again, which is why we need to change the equation. We can't just be a threat. We need to become something the Council can't eliminate even if they're willing to pay the price. What do you have in mind? Marcus pulled up a new display. It showed a map of Council space, but this version highlighted regions in red. These are species that the Council has suppressed over the past 1,000 years. Some are quarantined. Others accepted subordinate status but resent it. A few are observer species like us, waiting for a chance to break free. There are hundreds of them. And right now, they're watching what humanity does next. Director Tanaka caught his meaning immediately. You want to start a rebellion. I want to offer an alternative, Marcus corrected. The Council maintains power because everyone believes resistance is impossible. We just proved that wrong. If we can survive the next 72 hours, if we can force the Council to negotiate instead of attacking, then every suppressed species in the galaxy will know that the system can be challenged. President Reeves studied the map. You're talking about destabilizing galactic civilization. I'm talking about liberating it, Marcus said. The Council isn't civilization. It's an empire that pretends to be a democracy. Real galactic civilization would allow young species to develop without being crushed. It would share technology instead of hoarding it. It would be based on cooperation, not domination. Admiral Torres looked skeptical. Even if you're right, starting a galaxy-wide rebellion sounds like a recipe for chaos. Wars everywhere. Millions of deaths. As opposed to the deaths the Council causes? Marcus pulled up more data. In the last century alone, the Council has quarantined 42 species. Most died within 50 years. Starvation, resource depletion, internal collapse. The Council doesn't have to fire a shot. They just cut off a species from galactic trade and wait for them to disappear. That's not peace. That's slow genocide. The room fell silent. Everyone present had seen those same reports. They'd studied the Council's history during Earth's preparation for this confrontation. The numbers were horrifying. Finally, General Okoro spoke. Let's say we survive the immediate threat. Let's say the Council backs down and agrees to leave us alone. What then? We become an isolated power that everyone fears but nobody trusts? Not isolated, Marcus said. We start building alliances. Quietly at first. We reach out to species that want change. We share technology that the Council restricts. We help them build their own deterrents. Within a generation, there could be dozens of independent powers that refuse Council authority. The balance of power shifts. President Reeves turned from the window. It's a long-term strategy that requires us to survive the short term. Admiral, what are our immediate options if the Council fleets attack? Torres called up tactical displays. We have 300 warships. Most. Are equipped with weapons based on Council technology we've reverse-engineered. We're faster and more maneuverable than most Council vessels because we built our ships smaller and lighter. In a running fight, we can inflict significant casualties. But we can't win a sustained engagement. What about our antimatter vessels? They're autonomous. Once activated, they'll carry out their programming regardless of what happens to Earth. The Council knows this. Even if they destroy every human, ship and sterilize our planet, those 73 worlds still burn? President Reeves sat down heavily. So our best-case scenario is that we inflict enough damage to make the Council negotiate. Worst case, we die but take a significant chunk of galactic civilization with us. That's the situation, Torres confirmed. An alert chimed. Director Tanaka checked her display and her expression changed. We're receiving a priority transmission. It's from the Galactic Council. Chancellor Vorn wants to speak with you directly, Madam President. Put him through. The holographic display shifted to show Vorn's serpentine form. His scales were gray, which according to the briefing materials indicated stress and uncertainty. President Reeves, Vorn said, I am contacting you against the advice of many Council members. They believe any communication with humanity now shows weakness. But I am old enough to remember civilizations that refuse to compromise. Most of them are extinct. President Reeves kept her expression neutral. I'm listening, Chancellor. The Council is divided, Vorn admitted. Some species want immediate military action. They believe humanity's threats are bluffs and that destroying Earth will restore order. Others recognize that your antimatter vessels are real and that attacking you means accepting catastrophic losses. A very few, are suggesting that perhaps the Council has been too restrictive in its treatment of emerging civilizations. And what do you believe? Vorn's scales rippled. I believe your ambassador was correct. The Council has maintained stability by suppressing potential rivals. This strategy worked for millions of years, but humanity is different. You develop too quickly. You learn too much. You refused to accept your assigned place, and now we face a situation unprecedented in Council history. We cannot destroy you without destroying ourselves. So you're offering a deal? I'm suggesting a possibility, Vorn said. The Council could recognize Earth as an independent power. Not a member, not an observer, something new. An acknowledged sovereign state that exists outside Council authority. You would be free to expand, to trade with willing partners, to develop your civilization without interference. In exchange, you remove your antimatter vessels and agree not to interfere with Council operations. Marcus leaned toward President Reeves and whispered urgently, "It's a trap. They're buying time to develop countermeasures to our stealth technology. 6 months from now, they'll locate every antimatter vessel and neutralize them, then they'll attack." President Reeves nodded slightly but addressed Vorn. "An interesting proposal, Chancellor. But it requires us to disarm while you maintain overwhelming military superiority. That's not a negotiation, that's surrender with extra steps." Vorn's scales darkened. "We cannot allow humanity to hold Council worlds hostage indefinitely. That is unacceptable. And we cannot allow the Council to quarantine or suppress humanity's development," Reeves countered. "Your proposal asks us to trust that you'll honor Earth's independence after we've given up our only leverage. Based on Council history, that trust would be fatally misplaced." "Then what do you propose?" President Reeves glanced at Marcus, who nodded. This was the moment they'd planned for. "We propose a genuine restructuring of the galactic order. Not independence just for humanity, but for every species that wants it. The Council becomes an optional organization that species can join or leave freely. Technology sharing becomes standard practice. Military restrictions are lifted. Young civilizations are supported, not suppressed." Vorn's scales went through several rapid color changes. "You're demanding the dissolution of the Council." "We're demanding it evolves," Reeves said. "The current system is unsustainable, we've proven that. But war isn't inevitable if both sides are willing to change. The Council can continue to exist as a cooperative body that facilitates trade, communication, and mutual defense." "What ends?" "Is the Council's monopoly on power and its systematic oppression of emerging species?" "Impossible," Vorn hissed. 800 species will never agree to such radical changes. Then 800 species will watch 73 of their most important worlds disappear," Reeves said coldly. "We're not asking permission, Chancellor. We're informing you of the new reality. The old system is dead. What replaces it is partially up to you. You can help build something better, or you can cling to the old order and pay the price." Vorn stared at her for a long moment. "You are condemning the galaxy to chaos." "We're giving the galaxy a chance at freedom," Reeves replied. "There's a difference." The transmission ended. Vorn's image disappeared. Admiral Torres exhaled slowly. "Well, that went about as well as expected." "How long until those battle groups reach attack range?" 58 hours, an aide reported. General Okoro stood. "We should start evacuation procedures. Get as many civilians as possible into the deep shelters. If this goes wrong, at least some of humanity might survive." President Reeves nodded. "Do it. But also prepare our fleets for immediate deployment. If the Council attacks, we hit them with everything we have. And make sure every antimatter vessel is ready to execute its programming on our signal." As the military officers moved to carry out their orders, Marcus remained at the table. "Do you think they'll back down?" President Reeves looked at him. "Honestly, I don't know. We're betting that the Council values those 73 worlds more than they hate losing control. But pride is a powerful force. Some species would rather die than admit they were wrong. Then we better hope there are enough reasonable voices on the Council to prevent total war." "Hope," Reeves said quietly. "We're defending humanity's future with hope and antimatter. If our grandparents could see us now." Through the window, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, unaware that in less than 3 days it might become a battlefield that determined the fate of the entire galaxy. The Xanthari destroyer emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Sol, system exactly 47 hours after Chancellor Vorn's communication. It came alone, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. Admiral Torres watched from Earth's orbital command station as the insectoid vessel approached slowly, making no aggressive moves. "It's a scout," her tactical officer said. "Passive sensors only. They're taking our measure," Torres nodded. "Let them look. Make sure they see everything we want them to see." The orbital command station was humanity's largest military installation. Bristling with weapons, surrounded by defensive satellites, home to 3,000 personnel. It looked impressive. What the Xanthari sensors wouldn't detect were the additional 600 stealth ships hiding in Earth's shadow, powered down to minimal signatures, waiting. A communication request came through. Torres accepted it. A Xanthari commander appeared on screen, its compound eyes reflecting light in strange patterns. The translator rendered its clicking mandibles into human speech. Human Admiral Torres. I am Commander Kilix of the Xanthari Dominion. I come bearing a message from the Galactic Council. Speak, Commander. The Council offers a final opportunity for peace. Remove your antimatter vessels within 12 hours. Accept Council authority. Your species will be allowed to survive as a protectorate. These terms are non-negotiable, Torres smiled coldly. Those terms are rejected. Here are humanity's terms. The Council will recognize Earth's complete sovereignty. All restrictions on human expansion and technology development are lifted. Furthermore, the Council will agree to reform its treatment of observer species within 5 years. These terms are non-negotiable. Kilix's mandibles clicked in what the translator identified as agitation. You demand the impossible. The Council speaks for 800 civilizations. You speak for one. Mathematics alone proves your position is absurd. Mathematics, Torres agreed. Let's discuss mathematics. The Council has 18 battle groups moving towards Sol System. Approximately 40,000 ships. Impressive, but mathematics also tells us that 73 Council worlds would be destroyed if you attack. Those worlds contain approximately 240 billion individuals. How many Council citizens died before our terms start looking reasonable? You cannot believe your antimatter deterrent will protect you indefinitely, Kilix said. The Council has existed for millions of years. We have technologies you cannot imagine. We will find your vessels. We will neutralize them. And then humanity will face justice for this transgression. Torres leaned forward. Commander, let me tell you something about humanity. We've spent our entire history fighting. Not just fighting other species, but fighting each other. We've had thousands of wars. We've developed hundreds of strategies for warfare. And one thing we learned very early is that the strongest military doesn't always win. Sometimes the side willing to pay the higher price wins. Tell me, Commander, what price is the Council willing to pay? Before Kilix could respond, alarms blared throughout the command station. The tactical officer called out urgently. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy spikes. The Council battle groups just jumped to faster than light. They're coming here? Torres felt her heart rate spike but kept her voice calm. Time to arrival? 30 minutes. She looked at Kilix. Your Council just made their choice. Kilix's image flickered. The Xanthari commander seemed genuinely surprised. That's impossible. The debate was still ongoing. No final decision had been made. Apparently someone made a decision, Torres said. You might want to get clear of this system, Commander. Things are about to get very hostile. She cut the transmission and opened a channel to the entire defense fleet. All units, battle stations. This is not a drill. Council forces are inbound. We are now at war. Execute Defense Plan Omega. Throughout Sol System, human warships powered up. The 600 stealth vessels hiding near Earth activated their systems. Additional forces stationed near Mars, Jupiter, and the outer planets began moving toward predetermined positions. Earth's 300 visible warships were about to become 900. It still wasn't enough to win, but it might be enough to make the Council regret their decision. President Reeves appeared on a secondary channel. Admiral, are we initiating the antimatter protocol? Torres hesitated. This was the moment. Once those antimatter vessels received their activation codes, 73 worlds would have just minutes to live. There would be no taking it back, no last-minute diplomacy. Just death on a scale the galaxy hadn't seen in millions of years. Not yet, Torres said. We wait until Council ships enter weapons range. If they stop, if they're willing to negotiate, we hold back. But if they fire on Earth or any human vessel, we execute the protocol immediately. Understood. Admiral, for what it's worth, you're making the right call. Let's hope history agrees with you, Madam President. The minutes crawled past. Torres watched the tactical display as 40,000 Council warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Sol System. They materialized in organized formation, hundreds of different ship designs from dozens of species. The fleet was massive enough to be visible from Earth's surface as a new constellation in the night sky. A communication came through. This time it was Chancellor Vorn himself. His scales were black with rage. "Admiral Torres? You see the force assembled against you. You cannot win this fight. Surrender now, and humanity will be allowed to survive in restricted form. Fight, and Earth dies along with every human in this system. You have 2 minutes to decide." Torres checked her tactical display. Council ships were spreading out, forming an encirclement pattern. Standard siege tactics. They weren't planning to negotiate. "Chancellor, I'm curious. You told us the Council was divided. You suggested some species wanted peace. So who made the decision to attack?" Vorn's scales rippled. The Vorheim Collective pushed for immediate military action. They convinced enough species that humanity's continued existence represents an unacceptable threat to galactic stability. The vote was close but decisive. "So the species that built their own empire through conquest decided that we're too dangerous," Torres said. "That's ironic. This is your final warning, Admiral." Torres took a deep breath. "Then let me give you one, Chancellor. Every species in that fleet has worlds within range of our antimatter vessels. If your ships fire on Earth, those worlds die. All of them. Every civilian. Every historical site. Every accomplishment your civilizations achieved over millions of years, gone in seconds. Is maintaining Council authority worth that price?" "You're bluffing," Vorn hissed. "No species would actually commit such an atrocity. The moral weight alone would destroy any civilization willing to kill billions of innocents." "Innocents," Torres repeated. "Tell me, Chancellor, when the Council quarantines a species and leaves them to die, are those deaths any less real because they happen slowly? When you suppress a civilization's development and trap them in poverty, is that more moral than a quick death? At least we're honest about what we're willing to do." Vorn's image disappeared. 5 seconds later, the Council fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams and missile launches created a light show visible across the solar system. The first wave targeted Earth's orbital defenses. Torres watched as defensive satellites exploded in brilliant flashes. The command station shook as its shields absorbed hits from multiple directions. "All units engage," Torres ordered. "Show them what humanity can do." The hidden stealth ships revealed themselves, appearing throughout the Council formation. They'd been positioned during the conversation, using the Council's own focus on Earth against them. Now they struck from behind and within the enemy fleet, targeting command vessels and carrier groups. The Council formation, designed for siege warfare, found itself fighting a close-range brawl. Human ships, smaller and faster, darted between Council vessels. They couldn't win through firepower, so they focused on chaos. Disrupting formations, targeting communication nodes, creating confusion. One of Torres's screens showed the battle from a distance. It looked like a swarm of insects attacking a much larger predator. The predator was strong enough to kill any individual insect easily. But thousands of insects attacking from all directions, coordinated and relentless, could overwhelm even a powerful enemy, of course. In this metaphor, the predator could still kill all the insects. It would just take time. And time was something humanity desperately needed. "Casualties?" Torres asked. "We've lost 40 ships in the first engagement. Enemy losses estimated at 200. But they're adapting. Council forces are tightening formation. They'll crush us if we stay in close." Torres nodded. "Begin fighting retreat. Pull back toward Mars, make them chase us through the inner system." As human ships began withdrawing, another alert appeared. This one made Torres go cold. "Admiral, multiple Council vessels are breaking formation. They're heading directly for Earth. Bombardment trajectory." 6 heavy cruisers from the Vorheim Collective ignored the human fleet entirely. They accelerated toward Earth, weapons charging for planetary assault. Each cruiser carried enough firepower to sterilize continents. Torres didn't hesitate. She opened the quantum-encrypted channel that connected to every antimatter vessel scattered across Council space. Her authorization code was one of only 3 that could activate the devices. President Reeves held another. The third belonged to Marcus Webb, currently planetside. This is Admiral Torres. Authorization code Sierra Omega 7. Activate antimatter protocol. Execute in 60 seconds. Across the galaxy, 73 automated systems received their orders. Countdown timers began. 1 minute until detonation. 1 minute until 240 billion Council citizens died. The communication channels erupted. Vorn's image reappeared, his scales cycling through colors so rapidly they blurred. Stop the countdown. We're recalling the bombardment ships. Torres watched as the 6 Vorheim cruisers received new orders and began decelerating. But they were still moving toward Earth, still within striking distance. 30 seconds, Chancellor. Those ships need to be out of Earth's orbit, now. The Vorheim vessels fired their thrusters, moving away from Earth as quickly as their systems allowed. But their momentum carried them closer for several more seconds before they began truly retreating. 15 seconds. They're retreating. Vorn's voice held barely controlled panic. Stop the countdown. Torres watched the tactical display. The Vorheim ships were now moving away from Earth. The rest of the Council fleet had stopped firing. Across the solar system, human and Council ships hung in space, watching each other, waiting. 5 seconds. Admiral Torres, in the name of every civilization in this galaxy, stop the countdown. Torres's finger hovered over the abort command. Every human in the command station watched her. The entire species waited for her decision. Kill 240 billion Council citizens and guarantee that humanity became the galaxy's most hated species. Or abort and risk that the Council would try again, would find a way to defeat the antimatter deterrent, would eventually destroy Earth. She pressed abort with 1 second remaining, the countdown timers across. 73 worlds stopped. The antimatter vessels returned to standby mode. 240 billion individuals would live to see another day. Unaware how close they'd come to annihilation, Torres looked at Vorn's image. The next time we start that countdown, Chancellor, we won't stop. Do you understand? There won't be another abort command. You get 1 chance. This was it. Fire on Earth again, and the galaxy burns. Vorn's scales had gone completely white. According to the briefing materials, that color indicated a Taurexian experiencing emotions their species rarely felt. Terror mixed with respect. The Council fleet will withdraw to defensive positions. We will not attack Earth again. But this matter is not resolved, Admiral. The galaxy cannot function with humanity holding this level of power over everyone else. Then I suggest the Council start thinking creatively about solutions, Torres said. Because this situation is your creation, not ours. We're just refusing to be your victims. The rest is up to you. The communication ended. Slowly, carefully, the Council fleet began withdrawing to the edge of the solar system. Human ships maintained defensive positions but didn't pursue. Both sides had backed away from the edge of mutual annihilation. President Reeves appeared on Torres's screen. That was too close. It was necessary, Torres replied. They needed to know we're serious. Now they do. What happens next? Torres looked at the Council fleet holding position at the system's edge. They weren't leaving, but they weren't attacking either. A standoff, temporary, unstable, but a chance. Now we figure out how to turn this standoff into something sustainable, Torres said. Because neither side can maintain this forever. Eventually, someone will make a mistake. And next time, I won't stop the countdown. 3 weeks after the battle at Sol System, Marcus Webb found himself in a location that officially didn't exist. The diplomatic station hung in neutral space between Council territory and the volume of space. Humanity now claimed as its own. No species recognized the station's sovereignty. No government acknowledged building it. And yet here it was, hosting the most important negotiations in galactic history. Marcus walked through corridors. designed for beings of vastly different biologies. Some sections had atmosphere, others were vacuum. Gravity varied from crushing to non-existent depending on which delegates required what conditions. The station was a compromise made physical, built by species that officially refused to acknowledge they were compromising. The negotiation chamber itself was more modest than the Grand Council Hall where Marcus had been prosecuted. 50 delegates instead of 800. The species present represented the Council's real power structure, not its democratic facade. The Taurexians, the Praxian Collective, the Vorheim, the Kelish, and a dozen others. These were the civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, and sitting across from them, representing humanity, were Marcus, President Reeves, and Admiral Torres. 3 humans facing 50 delegates who commanded resources that made Earth look like a single grain of sand on an endless beach. High Chancellor Vorn opened the session. His scales showed muted gray, a color Marcus had learned meant cautious neutrality. "We have gathered to determine humanity's place in the galactic order," Vorn began. "The Council has agreed to negotiate in good faith. We expect the same from Earth." President Reeves nodded. "We're here to find a solution that allows all species to coexist peacefully." A Vorheim delegate named Kragath slammed one massive stone fist on the table. The impact cracked the surface. "Peace. You speak of peace while holding our worlds hostage. Remove your antimatter weapons and then we can discuss peace. Remove your fleet from our borders and we'll consider it." Admiral Torres replied calmly, Kragath's stone features twisted in anger. "The Council fleet maintains galactic security. We do not take orders from a species barely out of their own solar system." Marcus intervened before the situation escalated. "Perhaps we should focus on why we're in this situation. The immediate cause is Earth's refusal to accept observer status restrictions. But the deeper issue is how the Council treats emerging civilizations. That's what needs to change." A Kelish delegate named Seraph pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that the translator rendered as disdain. "The Council's methods have maintained galactic stability for 12 million years. Humanity exists in space for less than a century and presumes to lecture us on governance." "Stability," Marcus repeated. "Let's examine that claim. Director Tanaka, if you would." Director Tanaka, who'd accompanied the diplomatic team, pulled up holographic displays. They showed data spanning millions of years. This is the Council's own historical record. In the past 10 million years, 4,300 species achieved space travel. Of those, only 812 became Council members. The rest either accepted permanent subordinate status, were quarantined and died out, or were actively suppressed. That's not stability. That's systematic elimination of potential competitors. Councillor Thane of the Praxian Collective manifested his energy form at the table center. Young species require guidance. Most lack the wisdom for self-governance at galactic scale. The Council provides structure that prevents chaos. "Structure," President Reeves said. "Is that what you call it?" "We've analyzed the economic data. Species in observer status pay Council taxes but receive almost no benefits. They're prohibited from accessing advanced technologies that could improve their citizens' lives. They can't form alliances without Council approval. They exist in a permanent state of dependency designed to keep them weak." Vorn's scales shifted toward defensive purple. "The Council does not exploit lesser species. We protect them from threats they cannot understand." "Then explain the Vorath situation," Marcus said quietly. The chamber went silent. Mentioning the Vorath was like invoking a curse. The Kelish delegate's bioluminescence flickered. Even Kragath, who'd been aggressively hostile moments before, seemed to shrink slightly. Director Tanaka pulled up images of a dead world. Continents scorched to glass. Oceans boiled away. Cities reduced to radioactive craters. "The Vorath were an observer species 3,000 years ago," Tanaka explained. "They developed faster-than-light technology without Council authorization. They began exploring independently. When the Council demanded they stop, the Vorath refused. So the Council quarantined their system. No trade. No contact. No aid? Within a century, resource depletion caused economic collapse. Civil war followed. Nuclear war after that? By the time the Council lifted the quarantine, the Vorath were extinct. 43 billion dead. And the Council's official position is that this was a tragic result of the Vorath's own choices. The Vorath were warned, Vorn said, but his voice lacked conviction. They chose their fate. They chose freedom, Marcus countered. And you killed them for it. Just like you've killed hundreds of other species through quarantine and suppression. The only difference between you and conquerors like the Vorheim is that you pretend to be benevolent while you commit genocide. Kragath stood abruptly. The Vorheim conquered through honest war. We made no pretense of mercy. But we also never exterminated species that surrendered. Can the Council claim the same? The question hung in the air. The other Council delegates looked uncomfortable. Even the ancient Praxian collective seemed uncertain how to respond. Finally, a new voice spoke. It belonged to a delegate Marcus hadn't expected to contribute. The Ixari were a species that communicated through pheromones translated into language by sophisticated technology. Their representative, named Whisper, had remained silent throughout the negotiations until now. The Vorheim asks a question that disturbs many of us, Whisper said. The Ixari have been council members for 8 million years. We have witnessed the cycle the humans describe. Young species emerge. They show potential. The council restricts them. They either submit or die. We accepted this as necessary, but perhaps we were wrong. Vorn turned toward Whisper. You question council policy now? After millions of years? We question whether our survival justifies the extinction of thousands of other species, Whisper replied. The humans have shown us something we forgot. Young species can be dangerous, yes, but they can also be innovative. They can bring new perspectives. They can solve problems we've stopped even trying to address because we've become comfortable with our power. Seraph the Kalash pulsed with agitation. The humans have corrupted your thinking, Whisper. They threaten annihilation to force us to accept their demands. This is not innovation. This is terrorism, is it? Admiral Torres asked. Let me ask you something, Seraph. How did the Kalash achieve full council membership? Seraph's bioluminescence flickered. Through centuries of faithful service and demonstrated wisdom. That's the official story, Torres agreed. But we've accessed historical records. The Kalash were quarantined initially. Your species' psionic abilities terrified the council. You could destroy minds, infiltrate thoughts, turn populations against their own governments. The council saw you as an existential threat, so they quarantined your home system and waited for you to submit or die. Ancient history, Seraph said. Irrelevant to current circumstances. Except for how you broke the quarantine, Torres continued. The Kalash developed a biological weapon, a plague that targeted non-psionic species. You threatened to release it across council space unless the quarantine ended. The council negotiated. You received full membership status in exchange for destroying the plague. So tell me, Seraph, were the Kalash terrorists? Or were they a species doing whatever necessary to survive? Seraph's bioluminescence went dark. The Kalash delegate said nothing. President Reeves leaned forward. Every powerful species in this room achieved their position through methods the Council now condemns. The Vorheim conquered. The Kalash threatened biological warfare. The Praxians transcended physical form through experiments that killed billions of their own people before succeeding. Even the Talrexians unified their homeworld through wars that eliminated 17 competing civilizations. But now that you're comfortable, now that you've secured your power, you expect every new species to follow rules you never followed yourselves. That hypocrisy ends today. Vorn's scales had gone pale. What exactly are you proposing? Marcus stood. A new framework for galactic civilization. First, observer status is abolished. Species are either full members with voting rights and responsibilities, or they're independent powers outside the council. No more permanent subordinate classes? Impossible, Thane said. Young species lack the capacity for full participation. Then they remain independent until they develop that capacity, Marcus replied. But they do so without council interference. No quarantines. No technology restrictions. No economic sanctions designed to force compliance. Independent species have the same rights as council members. Trade freely. Explore freely. Develop freely. The only restriction is that they cannot attack council worlds unprovoked. Kragath laughed, a sound like boulders grinding together. You describe anarchy? Within decades, young species would wage wars across the galaxy. Maybe, Admiral Torres said. Or maybe they'd form their own alliances, create their own institutions, build civilizations that compete with the Council, and perhaps that competition would be healthy. Perhaps it would push the Council to improve instead of stagnate. You want to destroy everything we've built, Vorn said quietly. We want to transform it, President Reeves corrected. The Council can continue to exist. Many species will choose to join because the benefits outweigh the costs. But it will be a choice, not a cage. And the Council will have to earn members' loyalty through actual benefits, not through fear of what happens if they refuse. Whisper of the Ixari spoke again. There is wisdom in this proposal. Perhaps the galaxy has grown stagnant under Council dominance. Perhaps competition would reinvigorate galactic civilization. Or perhaps it would lead to chaos and war, Seraph countered. War already exists, Marcus said. The Council just doesn't call it war when you quarantine species and leave them to die. At least open competition would be honest. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates supported radical reform. Others defended the existing system. Many occupied uncertain middle ground, recognizing problems but fearing change. Finally, as the station's artificial day cycle wound toward night, Vorn called for a recess. The Council will deliberate, he announced. We will reconvene in 48 hours with our response to humanity's proposals. As the delegates filed out, Whisper approached Marcus privately. The pheromone translator created words only Marcus could hear. You have started something that cannot be stopped, Whisper said. Even if the Council rejects your proposals, the ideas are now loose in the galaxy. Suppressed species are listening. They will demand change. You have cracked the foundation of an empire that has stood for millions of years. Is that a warning or a compliment? Marcus asked. Both, Whisper replied. Change is necessary, but it will be painful. Many will die before a new equilibrium is reached. Are you prepared for that? Marcus thought of the Vorath. 43 billion dead because they wanted freedom. He thought of the hundreds of other extinct species that had made the same choice. The alternative is slow extinction for every species that dares to challenge the Council, Marcus said. I'll take violent change over peaceful death any day. Whisper's pheromones conveyed approval. Then you may yet survive what comes next. But understand, human, you have declared war on the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. And war, even when necessary, always costs more than anyone expects to pay. Whisper departed, leaving Marcus alone in the empty chamber. Through the viewport he could see stars, trillions of stars, each potentially hosting civilizations facing the same choice humanity had made. Submit or resist. Live as subordinates or risk extinction fighting for freedom, humanity had chosen to fight. Now they had to live with that choice and all its consequences. The Council's response came exactly 48 hours later, but not in the negotiation chamber. Instead, High Chancellor Vorn requested a private meeting with President Reeves. Just the two of them, no advisors, no military personnel, no recording devices. Marcus objected strongly to the arrangement, but Reeves overruled him. If Vorn wants to talk privately, it means he's considering options he can't discuss publicly, she said. That's promising. The meeting took place in a small observation room with a view of the galaxy stretching out in all directions. Vorn was already there when Reeves arrived. His scales showed colors she hadn't seen before, complex patterns her briefing materials couldn't interpret. President Reeves, Vorn said. Thank you for agreeing to this conversation. Chancellor, what couldn't you say in front of the others? Vorn moved to the viewport, his serpentine body coiling and uncoiling in what Reeves had learned was a sign of deep thought. The Council is fracturing, he said finally. Your proposals have exposed divisions that have existed for millennia but were never openly acknowledged. Some species want to maintain the current system at any cost. Others recognize that change is inevitable. A few, like the Ixari, actively support your reforms. We are on the edge of civil war. Reeves kept her expression neutral, but internally she was shocked. She'd hoped to create some division, but full civil war would be catastrophic. That's not what we wanted, she said honestly. Isn't it? Vorn turned to face her. You attacked the Council's legitimacy? You exposed our methods? You forced us to confront the hypocrisy at the heart of our system? What did you think would happen? I thought you'd negotiate, Reeves said. I thought we'd find a compromise that allowed both sides to save face while implementing gradual reforms. Vorn's scales rippled with something that might have been amusement. You thought beings who've ruled the galaxy for millions of years would simply agree to give up power because you asked nicely? Even with antimatter weapons aimed at our worlds, pride runs deep in ancient civilizations. Some would rather die than admit they were wrong. Then what are you proposing? Vorn moved closer. A secret agreement. The Council publicly rejects your reforms. We maintain our rhetoric about galactic stability and the dangers of uncontrolled young species. But privately, we stop enforcing the restrictions. Observer species that want independence simply receive it, quietly, without formal acknowledgement. Technology sharing happens through back channels. The quarantine policy is abandoned in practice, if not in official policy. Reeves studied him carefully. You want us to accept a paper victory for the Council while implementing our actual goals through unofficial channels. I want to prevent the galaxy from tearing itself apart, Vorn said. Open reform would create chaos. Species that have submitted to Council authority for millions of years would rebel. The young species you claim to care about would become battlegrounds and conflicts between ancient powers. Billions would die. But quiet, gradual change? That might work. Or it might be a delaying tactic, Reeves said. Give us symbolic victories while maintaining real power. Then, once we disarm our antimatter deterrent, revert to the old system. Vorn's scales flashed with frustrated red. Do you think I enjoy admitting our system is flawed? Do you understand what it costs me to suggest abandoning principles the Council has upheld for 12 million years? I am risking everything to offer you this compromise. Then make it a real compromise, Reeves said. Not just private assurances that you'll be nicer while keeping all the power structures intact. Real, verifiable changes. Independent monitors. Public commitments even if the implementation is gradual. Give us something we can point to and say, yes, this changed because of humanity's resistance. Before Vorn could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency lights activated. A voice over the intercom announced that the station was under attack. Reeves and Vorn rushed to the command center. What they found there made Reeves's blood run cold. 8 Council warships, all from the Vorheim Collective, had appeared at the station. They weren't firing yet, but their weapons were charged and locked on target. And leading them was Kragath, the Vorheim delegate, who'd been most aggressively opposed to any compromise with humanity. Kragath's voice boomed over the communication system. Chancellor Vorn, President Reeves, the Vorheim Collective has determined that this negotiation is a betrayal of everything the Council represents. We will not allow humanity's terrorism to reshape galactic civilization. Surrender the human delegation to us, or we will destroy this station and everyone on it. Vorn's scales went pale. Kragath, you exceed your authority. Stand down immediately. The Vorheim no longer recognize Council authority in this matter, Kragath replied. We are acting to preserve galactic stability. The humans must be eliminated as an example to any other species considering similar actions. Admiral Torres's voice came through on Reeves's private communicator. Madam President, we're detecting the Vorheim assault. Earth forces are moving to intercept, but we're 40 minutes away. Can you hold out that long? Reeves looked at the Vorheim warships. 8 heavy battle cruisers against an unarmed diplomatic station. They wouldn't last 40 seconds, let alone 40 minutes. Negative, Admiral. If they fire, we're dead before you arrive. She turned to Vorn. Can you stop them? Vorn was already trying. He'd opened communication channels to the other council delegates still at the station. This is High Chancellor Vorn. The Vorheim are committing an act of war against a neutral diplomatic station. All council forces are ordered to intercept and disable the Vorheim vessels immediately. But the response was fragmented. Some species supported Vorn, others sided with the Vorheim. A few simply refused to get involved. The council's unity, already strained, shattered completely. Kragath's voice cut through the chaos. You have 60 seconds to surrender the humans. After that, we open fire. Marcus appeared at Reeves's side, along with Director Tanaka. We can activate the antimatter protocol, Marcus said urgently. Threaten to destroy Vorheim worlds if they attack. They know we won't do that for just 3 people, Reeves said. Kragath is betting we'll surrender rather than trigger mutual annihilation. Then he's betting wrong, Torres said over the communicator. Madam President, you have my authorization to activate the protocol. We don't negotiate with terrorists, even if they call themselves the Vorheim Collective. Reeves looked at the countdown timer. 45 seconds. Around her, 50 council delegates and hundreds of station personnel waited to see if they'd live or die based on her next decision. She opened a direct channel to Kragath. Vorheim Commander, you're making a fatal mistake. Attack this station, and Earth activates every antimatter device in council space, starting with the 17 vessels positioned near Vorheim worlds. Bluff, Kragath rumbled. You won't commit genocide over a hostage situation. Try me, Reeves said coldly. My people have a saying. We don't negotiate with terrorists. You want to see if we mean it? Fire. See what happens. The countdown reached 30 seconds. The Vorheim weapons remained locked on target. Then something unexpected happened. 3 of the 8 Vorheim ships powered down their weapons and moved away from the attack formation. Their commanders opened a channel directly to Vorn, not Kragath. High Chancellor, one of the Vorheim captains said. The collective does not speak with one voice on this matter. Some of us remember what it was like to be a young species facing council restrictions. We will not participate in this action. Kragath's voice carried rage that made the speakers crackle. Traitors! You betray your own species for these primates. We serve Vorheim honor, the captain replied. Not Kragath's pride. There is no honor in murdering diplomats. The remaining 5 Vorheim ships held position. Kragath had to recalculate. 5 ships were still enough to destroy the station, but the betrayal by his own people had shaken his confidence. This changes nothing, Kragath said, but uncertainty had entered his voice. Surrender the humans. Vorn spoke then, and his voice carried an authority that Reeves had never heard before. Commander Kragath, you are hereby stripped of council recognition. Your actions constitute piracy and terrorism under galactic law. The Vorheim Collective will answer for this transgression. Any further hostile action will result in your species' expulsion from the Council. You cannot expel the Vorheim, Kragath said. We are one of the Council's founding members. Even founding members must follow Council law, Vorn replied. Or would you prefer we treat the Vorheim as we treated the Vorath? Shall we quarantine your worlds and wait for your civilization to collapse? The threat hung in space. The Vorheim had helped build the Council's power structure, but they'd also seen how that power could be turned against anyone, even founding members if they stepped too far out of line. Finally, after a silence that stretched for an eternity, Kragath's ships powered down their weapons. This is not over, Kragath transmitted. The humans have poisoned galactic civilization. Sooner or later, all of you will see that. And when you do, you'll wish you'd let us eliminate them today. The Vorheim vessels departed, leaving the station intact but shaken. President Reeves exhaled slowly. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. Around the command center, delegates and personnel began talking all at once, processing what had just happened. Vorn approached Reeves privately. You see now what your resistance has created. The council is dividing. Species are choosing sides. We are approaching civil war. Or approaching real democracy, Reeves said. For the first time in millions of years, council members are making actual choices instead of just following the established power structure. That's messy, but it's also healthy. Messy, Vorn repeated. You have a talent for understatement, President Reeves. But I concede your point. The council will never be the same after today. The question is what replaces it. Over the next 3 days, the full council reconvened. The session was heated, with multiple species threatening to leave, others demanding military action against humanity, and a few brave voices calling for the reforms humanity had proposed. Finally, a vote was called. Not on whether to accept humanity's proposals entirely, but on a compromise framework. Observer status would be reformed. Species would have clearer paths to full membership. Technology restrictions would be reviewed and updated. Quarantine policy would require a unanimous council vote rather than simple majority. And most importantly, a new category would be created: independent powers. Species that existed outside council authority but maintained diplomatic relations and trade agreements. Earth would be the first independent power. They would have no vote in council affairs, but they also would face no restrictions. They could expand, develop, and trade freely. And if the experiment worked, other species could follow the same path. The vote was close. 437 species voted in favor. 375 voted against. The reforms passed by the narrowest margin in council history. When the results were announced, Vorn approached the chamber's center. The Galactic Council has spoken. Humanity's independence is recognized. Observer status reforms will be implemented over the next decade. This council acknowledges that our methods required updating for a changing galaxy. We remain committed to galactic stability, but we recognize that stability cannot be achieved through suppression alone. It wasn't everything humanity had demanded. It was, perhaps, 10% of what they demanded. But it was a beginning. A crack in a system that had stood unchanged for 12 million years, Marcus found President Reeves as delegates filed out of the chamber. We did it. We actually changed the council. We survived, Reeves corrected. And we created enough chaos that they couldn't ignore us. That's not the same as winning. It's close enough for now, Marcus said. What happens next? Reeves looked at the departing delegates. Species that had voted against the reforms wouldn't forget or forgive. Species that had supported the reforms would expect humanity to help them achieve their own independence. And the council, wounded and divided, would be looking for opportunities to reassert control. Now comes the hard part, Reeves said. We have to build something better than what we tore down. We have to prove that young species can be trusted with freedom. We have to show the galaxy that humanity wasn't just fighting for ourselves, but for a principle worth fighting for. And if we fail? Then the council was right about us all along, Reeves said quietly. And the next young species to challenge them won't have the chance we had. The council will make sure of it. 6 months later, Earth's antimatter vessels were quietly deactivated and recalled. It was a gesture of good faith, negotiated carefully to ensure the council made matching concessions. The crisis had passed. Humanity had achieved independence and triggered reforms that would reshape galactic civilization, but as Marcus stood on Earth's surface, looking up at stars that now represented possibilities instead of threats, he knew this was just the beginning. Other species were already petitioning for independent status. Young civilizations were developing faster, pushing boundaries, refusing to accept the limits the Council had traditionally imposed. The galaxy had voted to expel Earth. Humanity had declared war in response. And somehow, impossibly, they'd survived. More than survived. They'd changed everything. The old order was dying. What would replace it? No one knew. But for the first time in 12 million years, the future wasn't predetermined by ancient powers. It was open, uncertain, dangerous, and full of possibility. Marcus smiled. Humanity had always thrived on impossible odds. Now they'd have a chance to show the galaxy what humans did. When given the freedom to reach for the stars without shackles, the real adventure was just beginning.